Namaste everyone, welcome to Value Communities Project, Interfaith Dialogue. I want to thank Remy is helping us to have this event. Today's our speaker is Peter Rogina. He is the founder of Project Peace Lies. Last 5 years we are friends, we did so many events together. He's one of our supporters for a long period. And we did events at the United Nations and at 43rd Street and other places working together. Even we opened his peace lights in India. I was able to do it at the Goa ashram during our 25th World Yoga Festival. So let us see what is his dialogue for our interfaith today. Peter, welcome to the group. The floor is for you.
It's been a real pleasure to be part of this group over the last number of months. Looking forward to sharing what I've been up to and kind of the circumstances that have caused my path to intersect with all of yours. So I'm going to go ahead and share a screen here. A couple weeks ago, I did a talk to a bunch of youth in Nigeria. And some of these slides come from that talk, but some come from another talk that I gave at the United Nations. And these slides all kind of mesh together. So essentially, I find myself here quite unexpectedly, if I would have gone back a few years, working towards accelerating peace education, whatever that means, in a part of the world that represents 20–25% of the world in Africa, in the African Union. So I want to just kind of tell you about that journey, because the interfaith aspect of it has been a big part of this journey. So the outline for what I'll talk about is I'll just give some personal background, kind of some context, pre all this stuff, then talk about how the light art kind of merged and evolved into peace lights, how peace lights got me overlapping and interacting with the African Union diaspora, and how that has led to Project Peace Lights. All right, and then we can have some time for Q&A afterwards. So just before I go into the next slide, well, let me just jump. I had a Catholic upbringing. Went to a Catholic high school, public grammar school, played sports my whole life, and then graduated and went to Stevens Institute of Technology. Graduated with a Bachelor of Engineering degree with a specialty in electrical engineering. I took some graduate courses in laser applications, advanced optics. They were interesting to me. I had enough of a GPA to take them for free, so I did. When I left Stevens, I worked for 15 years at Hewlett-Packard. And it was a very, very great time. It was 84 when I graduated, so computers were just starting to kick in. And computer control of instrumentation was changing the world, and the telephone networks were evolving and so on. So I was technical at heart. And they assigned me to Bell Labs. So I was a sales rep for Bell Labs. Within a few years, five years or so, I was the account rep for AT&T headquarters, which was Hewlett-Packard's largest account, second largest account behind State Farm at the time. A couple of years later, I had taken over the international part of AT&T, and then I started another role that was all of the United States and all of the service providers for telecom. All the account managers reported up to me. It was a $120 million business when I left HP in 1999. I got an offer I couldn't refuse coming out of my art side, I'll talk about, and I ran a publicly trading software compression company. This is at the bubble, the height of the bubble. Internet was just starting, so software compression was huge. Very short period I was there, but very lucrative. Did some consulting, kind of set me up for a couple of years to do my next chapter, which was an entrepreneurial venture called Worldscape. I raised a couple $1 million. I was principal investigator on 5 Department of Defense and Department of Energy contracts doing immersive imaging, so virtual reality sort of stuff, but not computer generated. It was all real world based. So we went on and became a protege company under Lockheed Martin, the largest defense contractor in the world. And then 2008 came around. We had raised $10 million, signed contract, But as you remember, 2008, the whole market, the whole world went upside down. So the investor defaulted, kind of took the company out, and all the lines of credit rolled to me. In 2010, June 1st or 2nd, I applied for personal bankruptcy to get out from these hundreds of thousands of dollars that were coming. Just kind of a side note, the valuation on the company was $50 million. So it was really a tough fall. I had to let go of 15 people, very tough to do, terminate like 3.9 million in contracts. It was a difficult time for me personally. I started consulting. Now around that time, a year later, Teo was born. So I have a 9-year-old son. Many of you have met Teo, just turned 9 last week. So amidst all of this really difficult time in my life, I had this great stuff going on as well. In parallel with all this, I had this artistic background. So I started making holograms down my basement in 1988. We got really good. Had stuff on display at the Museum of Holography in New York City. We did a hologram of a gremlin that sold worldwide. I got into 3D photography. You can see on the bottom, there's me holding a pair of cameras. And I was always moving towards this idea of using large arrays of cameras to capture the real world and to provide experiences to people. Because I always thought that delivering an experience, say through a head-mounted display or through a window, if you will, a TV that acts like a window, could provide the empathy of the environment. And I thought that that could unlock some communication that was lacking and heretofore unavailable, and still is kind of mostly unavailable. So that's as a background. When I started my company, Worldscape, we pursued this, and the markets were immersive training, real world-based immersive training for mission rehearsal, maintenance and repair training, like looking over the shoulder of the expert repairing the tank engine or the jet engine or whatever it was, and medical training. Things where real world fidelity, and if you move your head left and right, you know, you see the continuous change of parallax, where all that built into our normal way of perceiving the world. So we started building these arrays of cameras. This was the first array that had over 1 billion pixels per second ever in the world. And in order to just even deal with this amount of data, we had to create advanced hardware that did this. So we were focusing on in-home education and training and whatnot. So I graduated to a pair of professional cameras, got to do some really cool stuff in my career. I won't dive into a lot of that stuff. One of the things was NBC sent me to the Olympics in Vancouver and also in Salt Lake City to shoot 3D. I did a 3D show at the Museum of Natural History in New York. And in 2009, I started shooting light. I'd always been interested in light, and I now had the camera to shoot light. I bought those 2 professional cameras because I took Teo's mom, who was my girlfriend at the time, and my 2 older children. I have a 24-year-old, a 22-year-old, and a 9-year-old. So I took the two young older kids and Kirsten to China for the eclipse in 2009, bought those cameras, started shooting light. So I really got enamored with shooting light. And you can see some of these things here. You know, I'm not going to show too many more, but like this sort of stuff was what I was shooting. And I always had this notion of doing some art related to these pictures. In 2014, I met Eileen Cohen and started doing light shows around New York City, just basically taking these pure light images and flying through them. We did probably 15 or maybe a couple more shows that year on places like the Cotton Club, Governor's Island, the TED Conference that year, the opening for New York City's honoring of the International Month of Peace. This picture, if you look in the background, it kind of looks like peace lights. This was the predecessor to peace lights. And whenever we used to put it into our shows, people used to stop on the street and say, man, that has such good energy. And so we kept kind of using it. Now, 2015, many of you remember, was the United Nations International Year of Light and Light-Based Technologies. So based on our track record and the fact that we really did have a bunch of beautiful shows, we were the invited artist projectionists for the opening ceremonies of the International Year of Light in New York City, which was a huge honor for us. So it was in January of 2015, and no one was going to be outside watching our newly minted show on the building. We had a 6,000 lumen projector, corporate sponsor, the whole thing. So I said to Eileen, I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take drapes and we're going to bring it inside during this ceremony. And we'll just put it up on the wall. And, you know, it made such an enormous, it was the first time we had ever done it. Made such an enormous difference to the energy of that room. I mean, I walked over to it and I put my hand in front of the projector at some point, and you could feel it in the whole room, like half the room's heads turned, like what just happened, you know? It was really stark. So the next month, February of 2015, we got invited to we were getting an award from the New York Peace Coalition. And Victor, this is how I know the Sheikh. This was the second time I had ever met the Sheikh. We played Peace Lights, and we were getting an award for helping them on a 6-hour music peace marathon that was streamed around the world, and we had a lot of good visuals, so we helped them. So the Sheikh came up to me at some point, and he said, Peter, the lights in the corner, everyone loves those lights. Such good energy with those lights. And I looked up at him, and I was just making conversation. And for those of you who don't know Sheikh Musa, 6'3" guy from Gambia. And I looked up at him and I said, Sheikh, you know, what about a video like that as a symbol of good energy or peace or something like that? And his whole demeanor changed. He looked down at me and he said, Peter, we have not had a new symbol of peace in more than a generation. We've been looking for a visual symbol because we're visual creatures to provide solidarity for actions of peace around the world. So I was kind of blown away. I didn't expect that. Right? Driving back from the Bronx that night, I had a thought, called up Eileen the next morning. She gave me the thumbs up. I called back the Sheikh. I said, Sheikh, here's what we propose. The New York Peace Coalition commissions Pete and Eileen for free to remaster drapes into peace lights. The colors will represent the different cultures in the world, and the motion will represent how those cultures interact and work together to achieve harmony and peace and good energy. We'll put the words peace lights up in a bunch of languages. And if you notice that peace lights comes up in 55 different languages. And we've had to, you can see peace lights. Is peace lights still playing? I hope. Anyway, I try to keep peace lights playing. So we delivered it to the New York Peace Coalition in April 8th of 2015. On April 9th, they adopted it as their international symbol of peace and nonviolence. 2 weeks later, peace organizations from 14 other countries adopted peace lights. It's now up to 19 countries. That June of 2015, the International Year of Light endorsed peace lights. It started playing all over the world. So this is from the very first time it played in public at Jacob Javits Convention Center, the Green Festival. On the day after that, a day after Earth Day, 2015, people were lining up to take their picture in the lights. It's shown up now literally all over the world, websites for peace in Nigeria, Germany. It's played tons of times in Fed Square in Melbourne, Australia, including for the Olympics in 2016, where it played a half hour before the Olympics and a half hour at 11:30 at night. And for every Australian athlete that won a medal, they added 15 more minutes of peace lights. Plays on the International Month of Peace, the Day of Peace, et cetera, et cetera. Opening of the New York City ceremonies for Peace December, festivals, concerts. This is Caroline Jones. She was on tour with Van Morris, Jimmy Buffett, and played the Grand Ole Opry. I mean, world-renowned artists have now played. This is an example of an interfaith event at the New York Peace Coalition in Sheikh Musa's place in the Bronx, where this many students, half of them were Jewish, half of them were Muslim, from Israel. They all came over from Israel. And they were all 16-year-old photography students. And they were over for a 3-week camp sort of deal. And I got to talk with them, not only about peace lights, which was interesting, you know, and talking with them about their relationships with each other back in the countries and so on, back in Israel and so on, but also about the photography aspect, which was a great connection with these 20 some odd kids, you know, who were photography buffs and kind of peace thinking children. It was amazing. Film festivals. And as Guru mentioned, a lot of times at the United Nations, Peace Lights is played at probably close to 40 events at the United Nations. The ECOSOC chamber, many of the conference rooms. Last year at the International day of yoga in the General Assembly Hall. Peace Lights was invited to an art display at one of the UN buildings for a month, and Interfaith Harmony Weeks and so on. So I started to meet people, and meet ambassadors, meet artists, meet a whole bunch of people. Peace Lights got invited to an event honoring this woman. Her name is Claudette Colvin. It was in the Bronx. Turns out that she played a very catalyzing, important role in the United States civil rights movement. Everyone knows Rosa Parks, got arrested on the bus. What many people don't know is that 9 months before, a 15-year-old girl, this woman, Claudette Colvin, got arrested on a bus in Montgomery, and it was her arrest as a 15-year-old that woke up the NAACP, that got them strategizing as to what they were going to do. And those actions led directly to Rosa Parks' arrest. Rosa Parks was picked because she was middle-aged, working woman, lighter skin, relatable, articulate. She was chosen to be the symbol of the movement. Claudette Colvin was a 15-year-old, short, dark-skinned, quote, troublemaker youth that, got pregnant, actually, within a short time after that, was not a good symbol. And they were worried about her. 1957 rolls around, and let me pause for a second. The way we learn it here, even in the United States, and I'm not surprised, everyone around the world knows Rosa Parks. I've met people from the every corners of the earth. They all know Rosa Parks, right? The way we learn it is Rosa Parks got arrested, and the response was the Montgomery bus boycott. Now, the Montgomery is what no one realizes. The Montgomery bus boycott took 6 months to plan, and that planning started within weeks after Claudette Colvin's arrest, because they realized that there was a legal battle that was, Claudette Colvin knew her rights. She knew she didn't have to get up from that specific seat on that bus. And she was the first person that said no, got dragged off the bus, got arrested. Very, very courageous, because it was a very dangerous thing to do. So much so that in 57, 2 years later, she now had a kid. She couldn't get a job. And she was still getting death threats. She moved to the Bronx and lived under the radar as a nurse's aide for all that time. Now, come 2015, Sheikh Musa discovers that right in his own backyard is this icon of the civil rights movement. So they want to honor her. They want Peace Lights to play, and they asked me to speak. So another piece of my story, and this picture kind of represents it really well. I feel that everything that's gotten me to this point in my life, especially on this most recent journey for the past 5 years, the universe has laid it in front of me and just put it there for me to take the next step and the next step and the next step. It carries for relationships, people I've met, things I've learned just in time before meetings, things like this Claudette Colvin opportunity, etc. I walked in, of course, they were honoring Claudette Colvin on December 1st at the Bronx Public Library. Of course, I waited to the last minute, right? I do a lot of speaking. I wasn't too worried about it, but I knew I had to dig down and find out what was going on with this one. I walked into the library, and as I was walking through the front door, it was the first time that it's like, okay, but what's going to be my strategy to find a book on this woman? And I kind of paused for a second, and I looked over, and no lie, this is what I saw. I was like, holy cow, this is like the universe is giving me this book. And I went and I took the picture, I checked out, I got in my car, and I was driving away, and it wasn't until 10 minutes later that it struck me that the reason that book was there was because it was right before December 1st, and December 1st was the day that Rosa Parks got arrested. So it took me a while to realize, but there we are. The universe put this book right there, okay? So I opened the book and I started reading it. And the first thing that jumped out at me was a statement that said, Claudette Colvin, because she did what she did, because she catalyzed the timeline, what people don't know is the very first thing Martin Luther King ever did out of his small parish in Montgomery, Alabama, first publicly facing thing was to organize and raise funds for the defense of Claudette Colvin. The very first entree into the public sector. So she's credited with, quote, Accelerating the Change in the Plight of Colored People at 15 years old. Now, I look at that in this book, and I'm an engineer, right? Always good at math, physics, all that stuff, right? Accelerating a change is a second derivative, right? The change is the first derivative, second acceleration is the second derivative, right? So I'm like, wow, that's interesting territory. What's that really mean? So I typed into Google, Plight of Colored People, 1955. What came up was about all the lynchings, 4,000 lynchings in the United States between the end of the Civil War and 1955. And actually, there's some interesting data that goes into 1967. I mean, there was still a lot of stuff going on in those days. Now, Claudette Colvin comes from this area where that red circle is, so she was no stranger to that, which makes it even more noteworthy what she did. I had an epiphany when I saw this graph right here. I said, you could say that the plight of colored people in 1955 could be measured legitimately in deaths per day. Now, over time, that went down, right? If she accelerated the change, then what she did was she pushed that curve to the left, like you're seeing on the screen right now. Now, what that means is there are now people who are no longer under the curve. And those people are literally lives saved. So this 15-year-old girl, by knowing her rights and courageously acting on her rights, literally saved lives. So I said that at the event at the Bronx Public Library. Afterwards, someone came up to me and said, Mr. Rogina, no one's ever told her story that way. Wondering if you wouldn't mind telling that story to the ambassador from the African Union to the United Nations. And I'm like, wow, you know, that would be an honor, right? Half expecting that it was never going to come to fruition. You know how it is at conferences. People come up, you know, a lot of times there's not the follow through and so on. But 2 weeks later, I was walking in to the African Union to meet with Ambassador Adonia Ayabari from Uganda to talk about this story. So one other aspect of this story that I'm kind of going out of order here, but it's important. Claudette Colvin learned her rights in large part, due to this woman, Mrs. Geraldine Nesbitt, who was her English literacy teacher. She taught the school about, the class about the Constitution, Articles of Confederation, Brown versus Board of Education, et cetera, et cetera. So when you tell this story, the way I just told it, no one disagrees that by accelerating the timeline, Claudette Colvin literally saved lives. By extension, Claudette Colvin, by empowering her with the knowledge, and her classmates can equally be credited with saving lives. And if you think about it, it was the content of what was taught to the class, to Claudette, that made the difference. And that content of her rights and so on would fall under the umbrella of, but not fully defined, but fall under the umbrella of peace education. So Claudette Colvin's story teaches us that peace education literally saves lives. So here I find myself walking into a meeting with the ambassador from the African Union. And I find myself, as a result of these meetings, at an inflection point that literally put peace lights on its continuing path just as a symbol of peace that plays around, and wherever peace lights plays around the world, people are encouraged to project their own thoughts and intents for peace into the lights, knowing that the same exact lights play everywhere else, and those energies are reflected and entangled in those lights. And the other, it has to do with peace education in the African Union. Let me talk a little bit about that. So peace isn't really kind of a goal, but it's how we arrive at that goal. And it strikes me, and I feel very passionately, that the means of arriving at peace has to involve training and education from the youngest ages that incorporate a lot of peaceful tenets. So before meeting with an ambassador, of course, you do your homework, right? Or any executive for that matter, any meeting for that matter, right? So I looked up the African Union to discover that there's 5 regions in the continent, but there's 6 regions in the African Union, the 6 regions being the 280 million people of the diaspora. Now, all 6 regions have the same rights in the African Union. So when I met with the ambassador, I said to him, hey, Mr. Ambassador, wouldn't it be appropriate and amazing if the diaspora in this red circle up here brought a motion to the African Union to honor this woman, Claudette Colvin, while she's still alive? Because the diaspora consists of anyone who's ever left Africa and their descendants, but specifically including the descendants of slaves. So when Claudette Colvin literally saved lives, and again, no one disagrees with that, she literally saved diaspora lives. So please honor this woman while she's still alive. She should be more of a hero in Africa than Rosa Parks, because her story is arguably more relevant today than Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks was a great symbol, and kudos and God bless her, you know, and that nothing takes away from that. But Claudette Colvin's story was about standing up for your rights, unrehearsed. And that's at the cornerstone of making things better, especially in the most conflict-ridden part of the world, Africa. So what I was told was that there was really no diaspora organization that had a seat at the table, that it was too disorganized, and there wasn't any group that could receive that or make that. And I said to him, you know, it could be brought up by any country and probably should, but you know, it's interesting that the diaspora, who should be bringing this up, really can't. So we were talking about my business background and his business background. We had kids about the same age, etc. So he says to me, you know, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind doing me a favor and helping me to maybe review a document for me and give me your opinion on it. He called in his secretary. She went off. She brought back a document, gave it to the ambassador. He handed it to me. He says, this is our 50-year plan. So, wow, you know, didn't expect that, you know. Again, the universe handing me something, right? So I went off and I studied that document. And there are 7 beautiful aspirations. If you haven't looked at it, you can look it up online. Just read the aspirations. It's a beautiful document, really well thought out, you know, and that at the time in 2013, there were 54 countries. Now it's 55. There was some political thing. Morocco was out and in, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, all these countries agreed on this, which is amazing, right? Aspiration 4 calls for a peaceful and secure Africa. The words underneath it on the bottom here say, a culture of peace and tolerance shall be nurtured in Africa's children and youth through peace education. There was my connection back to Claudette Colvin, right? So there is a tie there. So I went on to read the rest of the document. I read the first 10-year plan, the development goals, key strategic outcomes. I studied that whole thing, and I did some other research, right? Nowhere else. I was looking for peace education. How are they going to roll this out, you know? Nowhere else was peace education mentioned. So when I went back to the ambassador for the next meeting, which happened very quickly, you know, I told this to him. And he said, you know, that's insightful. You know, not many people would pick up on that. But there are reasons, you know. The first reason was truly historic that we got this passed in the first place, right? To get 54 nations to agree on anything is noteworthy, right? Agreed, right? But we could not agree on what peace education was. Because really, what is it? And I had said this before, again, with Sheikh Musa. Sheikh Musa introduced me to the gentleman who is now the ambassador from Sierra Leone to the United States and the Americas. He was the general secretary of the United African Congress at the time. It was just me, Sheikh, and Sadiq Wai. Sitting around a table, I got there early, and we just had like 20 minutes to ourselves. And we started talking, and peace education came up. And I said at that meeting, years before this, that it's an ill-defined term. It can mean anything to anyone, but it should be definable, right? If you just work at it, right? There are many Pan-African groups that exist, right? Doing different things in different ways, right? In fact, you know, you got a lot of Pan-Africanism that's happening as we speak. All these projects are happening, right? There's more. And Sheikh pointed me to a guy named Dr. Mamadou Dramé. Is his picture? There's his picture. Okay. He says, Peter, you must talk to Mamadou. After I told him that I was a little disappointed that the ambassador said that it wasn't in the African Union's charter to do peace education, and they couldn't do it. even though I brought to him the answer, right? You know, hire this guy, Mamadou. He has chaired Pan-African curriculum development working groups. He knows how to do it. I was going to leave, right? That was going to be my karmic contribution to the world, right? My acceleration of peace education by connecting the dots. And the ambassador said to me, we can't do it, but we would love to partner with organizations that can help facilitate that. That's not really what I was thinking at the time, right? But okay, so I continued to go. He said, one other thing, you know, even if you get this guy to run a curriculum development working group and you do it the professional, correct way that, you know, you've worked with him to get models for, financial models, you still can't drive that down into the tribe. So you got to figure that out. So he's been a very, very inspirational kind of guiding person to me. Again, you know, out of the blue, never asked for this, right? So the way the discussions with Dr. Drame went is, hey, you know, you've done this on a smaller scale. How would you do it on a large scale? I said, well, you know, you'd really have to get 2 delegates from each country and you'd bring them together, say in South Africa for a meeting, 4 or 5 day meeting. You'd do A, B, C, D, and E, right? He listed the stuff. So they'd prepare for the meeting. Then something like 9 months later, you'd have a second meeting, say in Morocco, nominally, and you do FGHIJ, right? You do these other things. In between, they're doing these things, and they come back prepared to progress the development after you define what it means. And then you have one final meeting 9 months later, say in Addis Ababa. And at this meeting, you finalize everything, pull it together for primary and secondary, and you ratify it, and you're done, and you have your curriculum. All this happens in about 36 months. I said, so you're telling me in 36 months you could run 110 people and have this happen? He's like, absolutely. It's no problem. I'm like, there's your answer. If left to its own volition, and I said this to the ambassador, if left to its own volition, when do you expect that that aspiration of your 50-year plan might actually be realized? Maybe sometime after the UN's SDGs, right, in 2030. There's a couple of education-related topics in there. So if, big if, Africa has their act together in 2030, maybe you'll see this by 2035. A lot of times it's easier from someone from the outside to influence and impact and affect change. And you all know this from your roles and your positions and your leadership in interfaith communities. And that's kind of, it started to dawn on me that, you know, Africa's just going to mess around with this and nothing's going to happen. You know, I by that time I had spoken and met a bunch of people from all over Africa. You know, we were doing the jazz nights at the UN. Everyone loves this story because it makes sense. And if you do it in 3 years, it's 2020 right now, call it 2025. You will have accelerated peace education for 1.3 billion people. 60% of that population is under the age of 30. The fastest growing portion of that population are newborns. Every year you miss, it's a sin, you know? So you can pull it up by a decade. What's that worth? I asked Mamadou Drame how much would it cost? He sent me his models. I expanded them, and I came up with about $4.5 million to run those 3 conferences in 3 years. So people started saying to me, well, Pete, you know, how are you going to run this? You don't even know what peace education means. I said, here's what we do know. And the first time I ever showed this was at the Human Rights Conference at the UN in 2017. We know that the topics for peace education it's not 100 things. It's maybe a dozen things. It's maybe 20 things. It's a small enough finite list of things that a motivated working group of professional educators can get their arm around. And it's topics like what you see on the screen here. Not really with any intent or attachment to any of these topics. But these sorts of things, you figure out what the lessons are as kids travel from primary to secondary. Kirpalji, last week I was asking you about when you started the meditation with the children. You said 5 and 6, that's very relevant. And Guruji is very aware that I am very passionate about involving outsiders in this curriculum development working group, because things like meditation and things like yoga and others could play an important role. One of the things that was talked about 2 weeks ago on the Nigerian conference call was that self-awareness is a very important aspect of achieving peace. If you don't have a self-awareness, then your awareness and your identity is more of a group-oriented thing. And groups can get into conflict with other groups, whether it's religions or it's ethnicities or whatever it is, or races, whatever, right? So that's where I was coming from last week. So the other thing we know about these potential topics that will be defined in a first meeting of a motivated self-interest working group is that all of these topics sit on a foundation of human rights. And that, luckily, is something that there is an existing off-the-shelf cut and paste curriculum for. So the key point was that it was a small finite list. L. Ron Hubbard, since we're in Interfaith here, known for his founding of the Church of Scientology, was a big human rights advocate. Human rights must be made a fact, not an idealistic dream. And it was even before he started, and I don't know the details of how Scientology was started, but it was before that he said this. And it was the inspiration of these sorts of leadership from L. Ron Hubbard and others that initially formed Youth for Human Rights, which many of you probably have heard of, largest human rights education organization in the world, very well entrenched in Africa. They have their curriculum in 24 languages. And it's a nice cut and paste. Doesn't even have to be developed. So this is a nice synergy, one of the partners of Project Peace Lights going forward. Education is the passport to the future. The future belongs to those who prepare for it. If you're gonna expect a peaceful society in Africa, you gotta prepare for it. And preparing for it in large part includes education. So I find myself pushing along these things, all right? So peace education is available and achievable, I believe, by 2025. The challenge is that when the ambassador said to me, you can't drive down peace education into the tribes. Even if you can achieve a curriculum for primary and secondary, you gotta you gotta involve them somehow. Which means you gotta visit every tribe in every country. And for a good 9 months to a year, I struggled with that. And, I was just kind of going along. Yeah, how the heck do you model that, right? A woman from Kenya came up to me after an event, and she took my hand and she started petting my hand. And she said, Peter, you're doing God's work, my son. But they're right. You do have to visit every tribe in every country. But don't worry, my son. She brought me over to a table, sat me down, says, this is how you do it. She said, you get teams of 3, retired teacher because they're respected, a retired doctor because they're respected, and a retired government worker that's respected. You interview for these 3 people. These 3 people go to each tribe, and they're not trying to sell them on peace education. They're going to host a day of discussion on peace education. They're importantly bringing with them food and drink. And that will ensure that the elders come. And you set these meetings up through the women's and children's coordinator in a tribe. And they will love to do this. They will get it right away. They will be passionate about this. And every tribe in every country in Africa have women and children's coordinators. And it's consistent with Resolution 1325 of the United Nations, which say specifically that women should be doing these sorts of things, especially as it relates to long-standing peace. So I said to Jennifer, well, how much would you have to pay these people? And my mind started going, right? And we got to the point where I could start modeling it. You got to make some arm-waving assumptions. Nigeria, as Remy knows, over 200 tribes. So you're going to need multiple groups of 3 in order to achieve that. Namibia has 13 languages. You need 13 interpreters. You got huge travel issues in Congo. You got all sorts of issues around. But you can make educated assumptions. You list your assumptions in your financial model, and you get a number that's at least credible, and you can adjust, and it's defensible. About $8.5 million. So now we're about 4 and 8.5, 4.5 and 8, something like that. $12.5 million for the working group and visiting the tribes. Now, when you visit them, you're soliciting their opinions on peace education. You're educating them on the process that's going on with the working group. You're bringing that back to the working group, and you're revisiting at the end to say, hey, you know, this is how these inputs from everybody were incorporated indeed into these curriculum. So you're at $12.5 million. Call it 15. Call it 20. This is how I do it. Call it 20. $20 million, which is nothing, right? You're accelerating peace education by a decade for 20% of the world. I mean, someone's just going to show up someday, and this is what I'm preparing for. Someone's going to just write a check, say, get going. It's too late to get going. Let's start moving on this, right? I expect that this will be funded in large part by the diaspora. And we were going to launch in February when COVID hit. I mean, it to coincide with Black History Month. You know, this Black History Month, give a gift to the children of Africa. You know, but you know that's been put off for the time being. But in that time, what's been going on are these meetings and this additional work. An NGO was formed, so we have a 501c3 in existence today to help facilitate. Specifically, the mission is to facilitate the acceleration of peace education globally, initially in the African Union. Because the African Union is one of those places that, I mean, where else has a 50-year plan, let alone a beautiful one that kind of has a visionary part in it that has peace education, you know? So I anticipate that the rest of the world will take advantage of the leadership position that the African Union is going to be in. And,
maybe you should start in Palestine first before Africa.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Maybe you should start in Palestine first before Africa.
Well, you know, let's do it in parallel. Africa has critical mass here. Let's you know, there's nothing wrong with extending that umbrella to be contemporaneous with the African timeline. You know, I always envisioned that it would be following, you know, the African timeline. You know, I've been challenged on this. I've had a woman kind of yell at me at a talk I gave. She was like, you know, you should leave this to the Africans. You know, who are you? You know, you're just a guy. You know, you're just a guy from New Jersey, right? You know, you need this more in the United States. You know, immediately. Look at all that's wrong here in the United States. So I've been kind of challenged, you know, face to face on this stuff. You know,
I'm sorry, but I don't understand what war in Africa you're talking about. What war in Africa are you talking about? The Senegal people are fighting between each other. The Kenyan are fighting between each other. I don't understand what you're talking about.
That's
in Africa fighting between
Let
each
him
other.
finish his presentation.
Sorry, I don't understand.
We can take questions after.
That's a really good point, and it leads into kind of what I'm going to talk about next, Victor. So thank you. So yes, there's the most conflict-ridden part of the world. There's religious violence going on. You know, that came up in northern Nigeria right now. There's also ethnic violence, you know, tribal violence. Heck, the whole of Africa is fighting so much because it was designed to fight. The Berlin Conference in 1886 or 96, I think it's 86, was specifically the Europeans getting together to strategize how they were going to divvy up Africa, because they were starting to conflict in their colonial advances. So if there were regions that were getting along, they split them. They gave them different languages. If there were regions that were warring, they kept them together because they wanted the unrest. And that's still continuing today. And what we're seeing is the remnants of that. So we're not pointing to any one conflict that is driving this continental need for peace education. It's an alignment that we all agree that peace education, and whatever it's going to look like after this professional process, will benefit society. And by inculcating these skills and education and knowledge into every person, I mean, by 2050, there's going to be more people working in Africa than all of China and most of Asia today. So it's a strategic move that is aimed at bringing these values into society and letting a generation or multiple generations start to grow up with them. Because those skills that they're going to learn and apply are certainly going to come in handy when shit starts hitting the fan, you know, which it's already doing, but it's just going to continue, right? So we got this, at least an organization now formed, all right? You got baby steps the whole way, right? So now money can come in a not-for-profit sort of write-offable way and help fund this effort to continue to do this. So I wanted to but I wanted to share with you some of the things that I left with the youth from last week, from two or 3 weeks ago when I gave this talk, because it's been the response has been really unbelievable since I gave that talk. People wanting to get involved, people wanting to work with Project Peace Lights in their country. So I said to them, look, here your role in the title of my talk was the role of youth in peace building, right? That's what I was asked to speak on. So I started with the answer, and I said to him, your role is to manifest the future. You're here on this conference, I said to him, because you've already taken steps that separated you from your peers because you want to be here. You applied to be at this conference. You got stipends to pay for the bandwidth so you could see what these slides look like, right? So your job is to make this happen. And I ran through the numbers of how if youth just organized, they have the majority in almost every way around the world. And if there are some good leaders that come out and are able to harness that power, you could really make those changes, I told them. But there are some other things that in order to fulfill that role, you've got to know that you have that power. So this is, again, to youth, summarizing my talk to the youth. You got to take care of yourself. Put your oxygen mask on first. Keep yourself in balance. Don't let yourself get swayed to the dark side and not be objective about what your role and purpose is in this. You have to keep learning. Why is religion the way it is? Why is Africa the way it is? And this is where that self-awareness comes in. And Immersive Mbosa gave a great talk. We kind of were leveraging, right off of each other. And he talked about how, for those of you who don't know Immersive, he just graduated with his master's from Columbia University in conflict resolution and mediation, and got the Dean's Excellence Award. Amazing kid from the Congo. I say kid, It was interesting. This talk was up to 29 years old. And the first thing I said was like 3 days ago before I gave the talk, I just had my 58th birthday. So I'm officially 2 times older than all of you. So anyway, Immersive is one of these people that spoke, and he talked about the self-awareness and about the importance of, in tribal conflicts, having both sides recognize their nationalistic connections or their global connections. Same thing applies with interfaith. Focus on the commonalities of peace within each religion, and take the notion of climbing up your individual ladders to the enlightened stage and then kicking out the ladder. I actually gave that example on that talk, and I learned that example from Reverend Susanna, a month ago when she spoke. So, this is all actively happening. I also encourage them to work with the diaspora and become competent on what they're doing. Work the interfaith angle. So here we go. Just as religions have those values that are cross-religion, cross-faith, so do those ethnicities. Everyone loves their children. No one wants to hurt other people, etc. Right? So there are strong global groups that they could partner with. I pointed them to this organization. I said, this gathering, right? I said, these things are very useful and continuing education for you guys. So keep working on it, understand social media, use it, understand the downside, stay informed, organize yourselves, right? That's one of your best tools is your organization. Just like in the interfaith community, organizing interfaith has great value to the world. Engaging with the diaspora and helping the diaspora, because there's a lot of issues. Just as the Berlin Conference designed the mechanism for failure for Africans, so did the systems of slavery, right? And the systemic stuff after that. So there's commonality. And finally, you can't do it alone. So you have to recognize each other, help each other, and be enthusiastic and have fun about the whole thing. But final point, and this is my final slide here as well. Claudette Colvin's story teaches us that by accelerating appropriate timelines, you literally save lives. So anything that contributes to accelerating those timelines can be shown to literally save lives. Stuff we learn on these talks every week, things we do, people we see, etc. So letting youth especially know not to be disheartened even in the face of kind of challenges and apparent backwards motion, that's part of life. And every day, despite that, you're saving lives. So thank you very much, everybody. It's been a great honor talking to all of you.
So Repeat, that was fantastic, fabulous presentation. Thank you for that. Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I ran a little over. I got my passion got away from me.
No, it's okay. I'm interested in the aspect you mentioned about self-awareness as part of the Peace Life teaching. So that's something I'm passionate about also. That's what spiritual awakening is all about. So it's some way to collaborate our efforts on that. I would be interested in it. Thank you. Thank you again. God bless you.
Peter, I like to hear your little about yourself, your life story, you go on, your background.
So I grew up in a big Italian family. One of these families where it was disciplined. Reverend Susanna and I joked a little bit about that, but a very big, very close, very Italian family. And I was always encouraged to do sports. And hold on one second. Sorry about that. So I was very active in sports. Always good in school. I loved math and science and stuff like that. All through, I went to a Catholic high school, and that had a big impact on my life. Actually, that gave me a new level of discipline of studying, and sports. And I learned a lot from running track. I had played baseball my whole life. And I ran track to stay in shape for baseball. And then I was always fast. And I was always pretty good athletically and coordinated and stuff. So my track coach, and CBA was a powerhouse in track. And they always won state championships and stuff. And I was always fighting to be like the fourth guy on the relay team. So I actually was that fourth guy on a couple state championship relay teams. And I was told by my track coach that I was no longer playing baseball. So I wasn't given the option at that point. But that really kind of focused me because I really didn't like track. I didn't like running, it's boring. But I had to get myself into a mindset where I could just run, and do the training and hurt myself and then, go back and do it again, to raise the bar on my performance. And I found that really helped me get through college. That discipline that I learned from track in particular applied to studying and applied to everything else. I picked up baseball again in college, joined a fraternity. I was captain of the baseball team my senior year in college. Did a lot of social activity, like ping pong. I was always doing stuff. So that's my background. I feel very fortunate, to have grown up in the environment that I had grown up in, with a loving family and a lot of good friends of all different religions. I went to tons of bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs when I was a kid, and that's kind of my story, my background.
Hello, Pete.
Hello, Kripalji.
Mr. Kripal, how are you?
Very good.
Your presentation has been very fascinating. I believe that human rights as part of the peace education, the peaceful coexistence, and the roots and seeds of it are really laid in the childhood. how we interact with each other, how we teach children about caring and sharing with each other. And also, of course, our cultural conditioning and all, where there is a conflict, we have to look at, when we look at that we're children of the same creator, no matter what color, what race, and what sex or gender or whatever may be. Once we start thinking in terms of that, hopefully we become more and more closer to each other. And as we do more and more participate in the variety of things, whether it's a travel to different countries, whether trying different cuisines, or meeting different people, playing with them, or singing, or whatever other activities may be, that all breaks down the barriers of strangeness and barriers of being different from each other. But at the same time, we appreciate the diversity and its relationship to celebration rather than condemnation. And this is one of the concepts which, with my background with Sikhism, Guru Nanak started with the concept of langar. You asked questions about langar last time. Mm-hmm. The idea was when people bring food together, share with each other, cook and clean and all those things, interacting with each other brings them closer and appreciative of each other. And then they're more empathetic to each other rather than just spectators in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Kripaji.
Any other question? Remy?
Someone with their hand raised, Moses Abolade.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Mr. Peter, Rogina, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I saw the invite directly from him on Facebook, and I'm happy to be here. First and foremost, I want to say the reason I have to skip some other events because one, I know Mr. Pete have interest in Africa. One, we've been together for like let's say 3 weeks now, and or close to 4 months, close to a month now, and it has been a wonderful time from the conference here, and I've been gaining so many things from you. Well, I did my first degree in comparative religious studies, and that was the reason why when I saw Interfaith, anything Interfaith, I can do any, I will have to leave any other thing just to be there, anywhere in the world from time. So I'm very impressed. Though I'm just concluding my peace and my program in peace and conflict studies here in University of Ibadan. Now, I want to just talk about, okay, first and foremost, thank you, Mr. Pete, for this presentation. I know we have so much to work on, and I know there is a lot of work, and I thank you for the energy. Please keep on the passion for this peace education. And I'm so sure that we will understand better. The more we preach the message, we get it better. So I want to talk about, there is this feedback during your presentation about Africa. I'm an African, I'm from Nigeria. And when there was that question that, is there war, what particular war do we have in Africa? We have so lot. And first, let me even bring it from the angle that conflict, or let me say, peace is not where there is no violent conflict. It is where you can, presently we have so many issues when it comes to structural violence around us. We have issues of human rights like what Sikhs talked about the other time. We have issues of violation of different things, and even structural problems like gender discrimination at different level. So, and the best way to tackle all this is by peace education, because we need to handle people. We need to look at the end picture. Let's look at it from, okay, what will happen in the next 20 years? I believe that the problem we are having now in Africa or in Nigeria is because some people some times back did not envisage these years ahead. Did not look at, okay, in the next 30 years, or in the next 50 years, how will people think? What will be the product of education? What will be the product of quality leadership? What will be the product of all this living together and handling alternative dispute resolution in a way, and living out without war and fear or insecurity? So I think, is a peace-building issue. And we should not make the mistakes of those years. We should not make the mistakes of our fathers. We are not like them. With the level of knowledge we have now, we should not continue like them. So what I'm doing, I have an organization, Peace Education and Practice Network. And what I've been doing over time is to see how we can project. We should be thinking beyond now, not just the conflict emergence, or maybe there is a conflict now, we now want to. It's always difficult to manage a conflict when it has emerged. Always. I've handled several, I've been to several, but what we can do is to prevent conflict itself. That's the best way to manage a conflict. When we are seeing indicators of unrest, civil unrest, when we are seeing cases of issues like people having misfeelings, mistrust within themselves. So that's how to manage conflict. Not when everything is already problematic and we are now trying to look for stakeholders, and it's always difficult at that level. So anybody who is interested to know about why this project is important, I think you just have to let it be so firm that it is better to prevent a conflict than to manage it. So we must see beyond just with situations, but creating the situation. At this level, we must start thinking ahead. So I think, Mr. Pete, you've done a very great work, and I really commend the analysis and the. You see now, presently, the light has gone in my place now. That is structural violence in itself. Some people are responsible for that.
So that everybody knows, thank you, Moses. Moses has pulled together a group of people, in a group of youth in Nigeria, and we are starting to organize how would we go and reach all of these tribes. So I sent Moses a spreadsheet, like, hey, this is we've got to fill out this information: tribes, languages, state, region, point of contacts in the tribe, who would be the Project Peace Lights team, what's the timeline, trying to also get like things like what's the word Peace Lights in that language, so we can add it to the languages on the art side. So Moses has taken the leadership, and we have a conference call in 2 days, another Zoom call with 6 or 7 of his colleagues. And Remy, I would love to invite you to that as well. With the I have a Nigerian flag up in my room that you gave my son Teo, and so I see Nigerian flag every day. And, so
thank you, sir.
Progress, and Moses, this is kind of how it happens, right? So thanks, Moses. Thanks for joining.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Are you getting me? Yeah, Mr. Peter. First of all, I want to thank you. This is Fofana African Immigrants Commission.
Yep.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you for bringing us on board, and really appreciate your effort towards the interest you have towards Africa. And my brother from Nigeria have said it all. It's the initiative we create a lot of impact, especially in Africa, because when it comes to like what he was saying, we have to see how best we can able to build the capacity of the young people in our country, so that they should have the mentality on how to handle, how to resolve conflict within themselves and other way around. So I really appreciate you, sir, and we're ready to work with you, and I'm happy, at least you are involved in other young people, other activists in other African countries, to see how best we can able to achieve this particular dream. And inshallah, by the grace of God, as I'm always saying, we are 100% in, and we are ready to contribute no matter what, to see how best we can for us to succeed in this particular initiative. Oh yes, because like when it comes to education, the rates, like for example in my country, because I don't know, because I've never traveled to Nigeria, but it's similar based on what my brother was saying. The same situation is going also in my country, Sierra Leone. Like a lot of young people are drop out now because they don't have basic, knowledge of the importance of quality education. And if you don't know the importance of something, definitely you cannot eager to gain that something. So we are, as I was saying again, we're 100% in support, and we'll try to see our best for us to put us together again, so that we can able to make a wonderful project back home. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's definitely a lot. There's more than just a little momentum in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is one of those countries that, because of the people and because of Ambassador Fode, because of His Excellency
Ambassador Fode is my brother.
Always been up front.
Yeah, Ambassador Fode is my brother. Yes, my elder brother.
He was an amazing man. I miss him.
I know. May his soul rest in peace.
Yep.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question and comments. Pete and I have actually, we discussed previously about this project, and it's such a wonderful presentation. It's very ambitious, it's timely. At the same time, it looks very engaging. Some of the questions that I would have would be how to engage the appropriate, youth in this project. As you know, many youth, after their education, higher education, they often do not have employment. So perhaps there's a way you can develop maybe some sort of internship opportunities where would spark, some of their interest. The other challenge you may run into would be compensation, or how you're gonna fund this project. You have to come up with the appropriate partners, that would actually also be able to promote at length, those with contacts and, reaching out to various, communities. Of course, it's an international project, so you're going to be met with a lot of resistance in many communities. So that's where I would like to, keep this as a maybe suggestion and see if it's going to work in any of the countries, targeting local government communities as opposed to tribal leaders, because sometimes, many of these leaders may be thinking it's an infiltration, of their culture or way of life, giving historical activities that have challenged many of these communities. So, I would suggest to maybe reach out to local government communities. They know how best to reach out to each maybe tribal community or leader or something like that. That may be the first step, and then use maybe the ones that are successful as model of how you can now reach out to other communities or other countries and see where it's welcomed the most. I wouldn't necessarily target political leaders or something like that, because initially when we discussed, you were looking to see how to contact maybe I don't know, like Department of Education, to see if they could incorporate it into the curriculum. Already many countries curriculum is, it's not even up to date, and where it's up to date, universities are not adequately funded. So look at the community, look at the whether you want to look into high schools, which most countries, they call them secondary schools, or you're looking to target universities. So those would be two different ways to reach other people or get them engaged in the project. But I certainly, I'm open and available to collaborate with you. And you mentioned Imamsi. He was one of my very good students when I started teaching at BMCC. And, I'm always very proud of him, still in touch with him. And, I know he's going to be the next president of Congo. So we have a very good young leader who is also in touch with many other young leaders, as you know that with your correspondence with him already. So I want to commend you and I salute you for such a good presentation. It's needed. it's timely. We just have to work on a lot of challenges in terms of participation, outreach, finances, and the appropriate partners. And, not because I'm an African, but, I welcome and I support the project. But at the same time, I agree with Victor that, there should be other possibilities to expand to other regions. The strength right now is Africa because you've done so much work. But let's see how positive, how this is going to be impacted, how it's going to impact communities in Africa. Then we can write about the positive impact it's had, and then look at other regions. So I want to commend you, and I'm available and in service anytime. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Remy. We will be in touch, and I've appreciated your guidance to date as well. And you're right that the internships as a way of engaging. We've had discussions about what do we call the interns? Are they aspiring to be peace ambassadors or some sort of thing? And then you have the question of how do you finance? It's great if you have a budget to fund the activities of the interns. It's a little bit of a different relationship until you get that budget. So, so that's all kind of a startup mentality and entrepreneurial sort of way of thinking about it. But like I said, the way I think is I want to be in a position that when that first check gets written, that we don't have to figure it out then, that we can just start to execute. And that's what's exciting about what's going on in Nigeria right now, is that, this is the very first kind of trial. And I appreciate what you're saying about not only focusing on tribal, but also government cannot be left out of that picture when we approach this. So thank you so much.
Brother Pete, this is Raj. I know you lost a dear friend a few days ago. Can you share her life, and also then you can take a moment of silence for her? Thank you.
She was the person behind the Peace Lights t-shirts. She was the first person who actually got the first project peacelights.org website up. Now it's being worked by another person, John Bosco, in Lagos, Nigeria. But Cynthia Henrich is her name, and we were together for a couple of years. And amazing woman. She went to Stevens also a few years after me. We met each other through some friends who kind of bridged the gap. She was 5 years younger than me, and 5 or 6. And yeah, she had cancer 17 years ago, and had surgery and was in remission. It came back. It took her almost 2.5 to 3 months to get the MRI that she was looking to get because of COVID. And when it came back, she was going through chemo, and she had a port for a PICC line. It got infected, and things went down very quickly. But many of you know her from the events she was at SCORE. Tons of Peace Lights events, helping out, meeting people, inspiring people. She got me into a whole healthier way of life. And I really credit her with helping to. I'd always been healthy, but I wasn't optimized, and I was just kind of, she really helped me to kind of get back, So she'll be missed. She'll be missed. They're planning a video for her at some point, and I'll let Guruji know, and we'll get the word out. But yeah, it's a big hole.
So
our prayers are with you. Thank you.
Thank you. She really enjoyed coming to the events too. She had to roll her eyes a couple times. She was actually very conservative, and believe it or not, she was a staunch Trump supporter. So so we had some interesting conversations.
Pete, this is the point I was bringing last day. The emblem is showing the African continent. That is great for that project. But as a part of the UN group, we need a wider range of plan. That has to be done by now, because once you start, you won't get enough time to mobilize a lot of things, you know. And wherever you get a chance, in any country or any village in a country, you just take it. This is my experience. In 3 years, I worked for that total literacy program in Kerala. That was the first project in the world we achieved 100% literacy during my college days. We never had any money, but we had the support from the people. Once you get the people, everything will follow through. That's the way it is. So if you take one village in one country and mobilize a group there and give the guidance, it will go very fast. I know Africa and Asia need a lot of work. It's not simple. Of course, America needs some changes here, you know, but it will take time because a lot of educated people and a lot of groups, those who control the world market. So we had to go for the local people, those who are ready to accept your vision, those who are ready to understand. Like Jesus had a lot of followers from the fishermen. They are uneducated people.
Mm-hmm.
Those who are uneducated, those who are empty, easy to fill the bottle, you know. Otherwise, you cannot do. So you had to pick one village in one country and give the guidance. Just focus on that one and slowly it will grow. Otherwise, it will be very hard. And we cannot stick with one area because we are globalized community. We had to move from the beginning as a universal method. That is my suggestion.
So I appreciate that, and you were the one who inspired that the back of the Peace Lights postcard has the world on it. We weren't gonna, I hadn't thought about that honestly. So we do have a graphic that actually another thing that Cynthia did was Cynthia was the one who put Peace Lights into the Africa and made the logo. So we actually have a similar world, kind of a oval world that we can put Peace Lights in, and we picked the image, but we just never got around to putting that together. But I will, because I think it's important, and Victor's comment before really bears it out that, you know, people right now would want to be involved in this. So, you know, I've always envisioned that it would be a conference-like environment, these working groups. So call it 110 people from the 55 countries, Youth for Human Rights, UNESCO, yoga community, etc. You're probably at 200 people, right? 250 people maybe. People from the rest of the world are going to want to send representatives as well, and we're going to want to support that. So I promise you that I will try and push on that logo thing as a priority. I'll get Eileen to get some of that happening.
That we need very fast, because we see when we announce our programs, your logo is there as a stripe, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And a stripe is there, still people look for the logo, regular logo, you know. And this is going to mass, not 100 people. We may have less people in the meeting, but our announcement will go to over 2 million people every single day. That's the way it is. So those who are interested, maybe out of 2 million, maybe we get 10. That's fine, you know.
But if they're the right 10, if they're the right 10.
10 or even 1 is fine. If this is going to their head, that is important thing. So they want to make the change. First of all, peace is coming from personal experience, not from somebody's experience. A person is supposed to educate themselves. They should have the peace in their mind, and they can give pass the peace to other people. Otherwise, nothing will happen. So that's the importance of yoga and all the spirituality. You know, you come together as a human being more than anything else.
And you know, someone asked me, well, you asked me about my background. I was raised Catholic, but I don't consider myself Catholic. You know, I'm more of, you know, consider spiritual, a spiritual being is what I consider myself. I kind of in high school I got a little a little disenamored with the dogma. And I started learning about how, the books of the Bible were chosen, and some of the teachings were highlighted depending on whether how the church wanted to control the populace. And so that kind of led me a little bit away from Catholicism as, the one religion, and that opened everything else up. So I another reason why I really appreciate this group.
Any other questions?
I actually I have a 1:30 call for my consulting business. That's how I pay the bills, since Peace Lights is not providing a salary yet. But so I have a call at 1:30, so I'm going to have to jump off as well.
I saw Mirta Bardo from Argentina, Gabriel Homam. Then who else, new person? Imam, can you do a prayer? We'll wind up very fast.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody.
Hi, how are you?
I said to you, Namaste is my first time here.
Right.
I was listening all the exposition with a lot of attention, because I was working on peace since a long time ago. And it's a good idea to make a project and to be part of it. For all this, I say thank you. There will be some differences that they must work on. You say politics, social, school, person, humans, body, spirit. Well, that's a hard work. It's a hard work. I'll be very thankful to Peter. Pleased to meet you. And Guru Dileepji for inviting me to be part of this conversation and project. And well, I'm waiting for the next meeting for introduce me into the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to every one of you from Africa, so far from here, from Argentina. But well, with the same objective, and that is a very, really good thing.
Thank you. So next Wednesday is Swami Bua's 10th Samadhi Day celebration. We start 11 a.m., 1 hour before the regular starting time. 11 to 1 is our plan. We'll mix things. Some are selected speakers. Once they finish, then we'll keep an open forum for everybody to speak. So who are available that day, let us see, come together. And Remy, do you want to say something?
You mean for next Wednesday or?
Yeah, 22nd.
Yes, I think we're fine. We're fine for that day. So
I
this
think
Friday.
we made the.
Yes, I have the link I sent to you.
Okay.
So we're fine for the 22nd, but
Right.
you're all invited from the 17th, which is this Friday.
Day after tomorrow.
We have the Spirit of Peace conference coming up, and Guruji and I would be moderating the prayers for peace opening ceremony from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. I believe there are flyers going around already, so you're all welcome to participate. And for next Wednesday, we're fine. I think the link is out already. If not, I can double check and resend to you.
So thank you, Peter, being
Thank
part
you.
of our movement and your presentation, wonderful presentation. So we'll keep
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, see you next week.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Bye. Namaste,
Thank you
everybody.
very much. Thank you very much.